On one side, a woman alone in northern Italy, speaking fluent Italian to a room full of small children who ran to her with their arms out. Crowds so large that people had driven 3 hours just to be there. A working visit built around early childhood research, done without a husband beside her, without a supporting cast, without any apparent need for validation from the audience. Just her, doing the work she has been building toward for years. On the other side, a brand video from Montecito that the internet spent most of the week trying to work out what it was selling, financial reporting that explains why the brand needs to sell something urgently, and an Invictus Games organization quietly losing sponsor after sponsor while the noise from the principals gets louder. This is the story of that week, and it is a story worth understanding properly, because the gap it reveals has been building for years, and the reason it matters is not because of the gossip. It is because of what it reveals about two completely different approaches to public life, and about what happens when those approaches are finally placed next to each other in the same news cycle for the whole world to compare. Let's start in Italy, because that is where the heart of this story lives, and because understanding what happened there is the only way to properly understand everything else that followed it. Catherine traveled to Reggio Emilia for her early years project. For anyone who has not followed this side of her work closely, here is the context that matters. Reggio Emilia is home to one of the most internationally respected early childhood education approaches in existence, a philosophy studied, adapted, and copied by educators across the globe. It is not a famous tourist destination. It is not a glamorous backdrop. It was chosen because it is the right place for the work she is doing. And what is that work? Catherine has spent years studying early childhood development, not because someone told her it would photograph well, because she genuinely cares about it. She has read the research. She has spoken to leading experts. She keeps returning to the same conclusion, that the first years of a child's life shape very nearly everything that follows, and that societies consistently underinvest in that period because the results are not visible quickly enough to generate political attention. This is not a fashionable cause. It does not lend itself to a magazine spread or a celebrity endorsement. It is patient, unglamorous, long-term work whose results may not be visible for a generation. She chose it because it is serious, and she has built her entire public identity around a subject that rewards consistency and depth rather than spectacle. That choice, made years ago and held to consistently ever since, is the foundation that everything in Italy was built on. But nothing prepared observers for the scale of the reception. The crowds were enormous. People had traveled for hours, not for a concert, not for a film premiere, for a royal visit centered on child development research. And when Catherine stepped out of that car alone, just her in a foreign country, no William beside her, the sound that went up from the crowd was the kind you normally associate with a stadium rather than a research center. She got down on the floor with the children. She was photographed with a baby who was giggling and wide-eyed, delighted simply to be near her. And then came the detail that genuinely surprised people. She spoke Italian to the children. Real Italian. Fluent Italian. Because as many people only fully appreciated in that moment, Catherine actually lived in Florence before university. That part of her story had quietly faded into the background over the years. And here it was, suddenly alive again in a room full of Italian children who responded to it immediately. The Italians, by every account, embraced her completely. And there is a reason this particular visit resonated so deeply. Italy is a country built around family, around children, around the warmth of the extended household. A visiting princess who speaks the language, who genuinely lights up in the presence of small children, who clearly enjoys every moment rather than enduring it, was always going to land well there. And she did. She made pasta. She was photographed cuddled up with children in scenes that looked completely unforced. She moved through the trip with an ease that observers found striking. Not the performed ease of someone who has been briefed on how to look relaxed, but the actual ease of someone who is exactly where they want to be, doing exactly what they care about. And here is the thing you cannot manufacture. The children did not politely approach her the way children sometimes do when they have been told to behave for an important visitor. They ran to her, full speed, arms out, as though she were someone they already knew. Children are the most honest audience on earth. They have no concept of titles, no sense of who is fashionable and who is not. They respond only to warmth, and they respond to it instantly. Every child in that room went straight to her. If Palace Insider is giving you the full picture, go ahead and hit the like button. It genuinely helps us reach more people. The royal historian Hugo Vickers, a man who has spent decades observing the royal family at close range and whose professional reputation rests on careful, measured judgment, described the trip as a kind of perfect royal tour. He noted the genuine fact-finding purpose, the dignity of the approach, the visible health and happiness after a long and difficult period, and the crowds who had traveled 3 hours simply to be there. He described it as natural, purposeful, and entirely free of artifice. That verdict, from a figure of Vickers' standing, is not idle flattery. It is a considered professional assessment from someone who has watched a great many royal appearances across a very long career. He has seen what manufactured looks like. He has seen what authentic looks like. His verdict on Reggio Emilia was unambiguous. Now hold that picture in your mind. Hold it, because we are about to cross the Atlantic, and the contrast is going to be sharp. Right around the same time Catherine was being cheered through the streets of northern Italy, a very different kind of content appeared online. Meghan released a promotional video for her as ever brand, and the reaction across social media was swift and almost unanimous. The video showed Meghan in an evening gown, touching her chest, gazing dramatically into the camera, drinking tea in a manner that appeared intended to feel aspirational or cinematic or seductive, or something. And the comment sections genuinely could not settle on what it was going for. One viewer described it as the behavior of someone who believes themselves to be far more fascinating than the audience actually finds them. Another said it resembled an audition reel for a show that nobody had commissioned. Those descriptions spread because they captured something real. There is a gap between how Meghan appears to see herself and how the audience receives her. And the difficult truth is that the gap has been getting wider, not narrower. The harder the effort to project a certain image, the more visible the distance between the image and the reception becomes. That is not a problem a stylist can fix. It is the central structural challenge of the entire Sussex project. And it is worth understanding why a video like that lands so badly, because the reason is instructive. Genuine warmth does not announce itself. It does not perform. It simply exists, and the camera catches it. A video built around dramatic gazes and carefully composed lighting is doing the opposite. Performing warmth, performing intimacy, performing aspiration. And modern audiences have become extraordinarily good at detecting the difference between a feeling and a performance of a feeling. The more polished the performance, the more clearly the audience senses the gap. The very effort intended to make the brand appealing is the thing that signals to viewers that something is being sold to them. Once that signal registers, the warmth evaporates. Subscribe to Palace Insider and drop a comment below because the conversation this week has been seriously good. Now here is where the story stops being about optics and starts being about arithmetic. Sources close to the couple, in reporting picked up across multiple outlets, have described a financial picture that explains a great deal about recent decisions. The Sussexes reportedly need a minimum of around $6 million every year simply to cover the basic cost of their life in Montecito. $6 million as the baseline, before anything additional. Around $3 million of that goes on private security alone, covering the family including their 2 children. On top of that sits the mortgage on a property that reportedly cost around $15 million. The As Ever brand was, in theory, supposed to help solve that equation. The jams, the honeys, the candles, the curated lifestyle offering. But the numbers, by most accounts, are not adding up the way they need to. The reception has been mixed. One candle reportedly arrived without a wick. The orange marmalade has become something of a running internet joke. And the overall sense from observers is that the brand is generating attention without generating the scale of revenue that would make a meaningful dent in a $6 million annual operating cost. Attention and revenue are not the same thing. You can have an enormous amount of one and very little of the other. The broader commercial picture is not encouraging either. The Netflix relationship has cooled, with projects canceled. The Spotify deal ended some time ago. The various Hollywood doors that were supposed to open after they left the palace have, for the most part, stayed shut. Harry, by these accounts, is focused on philanthropic work rather than on generating significant income. $6 million a year is not an abstract figure. It is a treadmill. A number that has to be hit again and again every year regardless of what the market is doing, regardless of whether the latest product launch landed. A working senior royal does not face that treadmill because the institution provides the infrastructure. Step outside that structure and every cost becomes a personal cost. That is the trade the Sussexes made. And the reporting suggests the earning side of that equation is no longer keeping pace with the spending side. The irony is considerable. One of the core reasons Harry and Meghan gave for stepping back was a desire for financial independence. They did not want the institution to have any oversight over their finances. They went out, signed the headline deals, and announced to the world that they would prove it could be done. And now, by the reporting, they reportedly need around $6 million a year simply to stand still. The independence they fought for has turned out to be extraordinarily expensive. As uncomfortable as the financial picture is, what is happening with the Invictus Games is a different and more serious matter entirely. The Invictus Games was supposed to be the one thing nobody could argue with. Whatever anyone thinks of Harry, whatever anyone thinks of Meghan, the basic concept, an international sporting competition for wounded, injured, and sick service personnel, is genuinely good. It comes from a real place. Harry founded it after being moved by the US Warrior Games, and the cause carries genuine moral weight, which is exactly why what is happening to it now is difficult to watch. Boeing, a major corporate sponsor, has ended its sponsorship relationship and is not renewing. A major aerospace company quietly declining to continue is not a small signal. Corporations of that size do not attach their names to causes casually, and they do not walk away from them casually. Every sponsorship of that scale goes through layers of due diligence and brand risk assessment. When a company of that size decides the association is no longer worth continuing, that decision carries information. It tells you that somewhere inside a very large and cautious organization, a judgment was made. The Australian government, after Harry and Meghan's tour there, declined to renew a substantial tranche of funding tied to Invictus Australia, a decision that blindsided the local organization. Meanwhile, the UK government has committed a significant sum of public money, reported to be around £26 million, to support the Birmingham edition planned for 2027. Public money flowing in, private sponsors quietly flowing out. That combination is precisely the combination that tends to attract serious scrutiny. When the taxpayer becomes the backstop for a project that commercial partners are stepping away from, the public acquires the right to ask why. Investigative author Tom Bauer, in his book Betrayal, wrote that Invictus funds had been directed toward private jet travel, five-star hotels, and personal transportation for Harry and Meghan. Those are allegations in a book, not findings of any tribunal, and they should be described as exactly that. But whatever the truth of individual claims, the donors and sponsors are clearly paying attention to something, because they keep leaving. The pattern of departures is real even where individual allegations remain contested. Allegations can be disputed. A steady year-on-year pattern of partners walking away is considerably harder to wave aside. For anyone in the UK who grew up with genuine reverence for the armed forces, the idea that wounded veterans might be overshadowed at their own event by the personal brand management of the people nominally in charge of it is not merely disappointing. It is the kind of thing that genuinely angers people. The veterans are supposed to be the story. The games exist to honor their resilience and their recovery. Anything that pulls the spotlight toward the personalities at the top is a betrayal of the founding idea, whatever the intention behind it. Back to Catherine. And it is worth dwelling on what this woman has been through in public, because the ease she displayed in Italy did not come free. It was earned through something considerably harder than a well-managed tour. Before she married William, paparazzi camped outside her flat. In 2012, topless photographs were published without her consent in a violation so serious it generated legal action. Years of relentless commentary about her weight, her clothes, her facial expressions, her family background, phone hacking. Endless speculation about whether the engagement was going to happen, when it would happen, why it was taking so long. The kind of sustained media pressure that breaks a great many people before it breaks them publicly. And then, while she was quietly undergoing cancer treatment last year, vast swathes of social media decided her absence from public view was suspicious, a mystery to be solved, a conspiracy to be exposed, and proceeded to dissect her marriage, her health, and her physical appearance with a level of entitlement that was, at times, genuinely disturbing to observe. A real woman with a real diagnosis, 3 young children at home, a husband managing the weight of an institution alongside the weight of a family crisis, and the internet treated the whole situation as a puzzle assembled for their entertainment. Her response to all of it tells you almost everything about her character, because through all of it, every intrusion, every unfair headline, every speculation, every conspiracy theory, she never once turned herself into a victim. She never gave a tearful interview. She never fired back publicly. She never used any of it as content. When she finally spoke about the cancer diagnosis, it was a short video, calm and clear. No tears performed for the camera, no victim narrative constructed for maximum sympathy. No carefully placed story designed to make anyone else look bad in comparison. She explained the diagnosis simply. She thanked her medical team. She asked for space. And then, in a way that is completely characteristic of who she is, she turned the entire thing outward. The message she chose was not "feel sorry for me." The message she chose was, "You are not alone." She used the most frightening personal experience of her life to quietly offer comfort to strangers going through the same fear. No warrior branding, no demand that the world reorganize itself around her pain. Just honesty and quiet empathy, and then a focus on other people. That is not something a communications team can assemble. It is character, and character built over 2 decades of consistent behavior, not manufactured for a single moment. So when she returned to full duties and traveled to Italy alone, the people who drove 3 hours to see her were not responding to a PR campaign. They were responding to 20 years of watching someone be exactly who they appear to be, consistently and quietly, without ever demanding anything in return. What comes next on the Sussex side? Reports suggest Meghan's next move involves a vow renewal ceremony. The framing reportedly being built around it centers on the idea that the couple never received the wedding they truly deserved. That the institution surrounding the original day denied them the celebration they wanted. That something important was withheld from them that a vow renewal would finally set right. Read that back slowly because it is worth sitting with. They had one of the most watched royal weddings in modern history, a global audience of billions, a ceremony at Windsor Castle, a carriage procession, the full institutional weight of a monarchy with centuries of history behind it. And the argument reportedly being constructed is that it was not enough, that the occasion was somehow compromised by the institution around it. Insiders quoted in the reporting suggest the real motivation is commercial rather than sentimental. A vow renewal generates content, it generates coverage, it generates licensing possibilities, potentially a documentary or a special event broadcast. The kind of product that produces income that the current brand operation is not generating at the required scale. It is a content strategy wearing the costume of a romantic gesture. Meanwhile, Harry is reportedly in discussions with palace officials about a potential return to the United Kingdom tied to an Invictus event, with those discussions reportedly involving requests for guarantees of respect and special treatment for Meghan as a condition of Harry agreeing to come at all. And here is the simple truth that most people already understand intuitively, because it is one of the most basic things human experience teaches. You cannot negotiate respect. Respect is earned, never demanded. It is built through years of consistent behavior, through showing up when nobody is watching, through doing the work when there is no audience to applaud it, through treating other people's interests as genuinely important rather than as leverage. Catherine has never once had to ask for it. She earned it the only way it can genuinely be earned, slowly, quietly, and over a very long time. William and Catherine are themselves heading to Australia. If you remember what the Sussex Australia tour looked like, the controversy, the funding questions, the lingering sense that the exercise was more about the couple than the country they were visiting, you already understand why this next tour matters. The same destination, a completely different approach, and a public that remembers the difference. William and Catherine will not say anything about Harry and Meghan in Australia. They will not issue statements or give interviews or fight back in any visible way. They will simply show up, do the work, and connect with people genuinely. And the comparison will make itself, quietly and completely. That is the thing the Sussex operation has never fully grasped. The monarchy does not need to publicly defeat anyone. It does not need to issue rebuttals, give interviews, or fight back in any visible way. It simply needs to keep going, keep doing the work, keep showing up. A public relations strategy can manufacture a moment. It can engineer a headline. It can stage a photograph, but it cannot manufacture a decade. It cannot fake the slow accumulation of small, consistent actions year after year that the public quietly registers, absorbs, and eventually trusts. There is also a lesson here about the difference between attention and affection. The Sussex strategy has, again and again, been built around capturing attention. The brand video, the documentary, the memoir, the essay, the interview. Each one is engineered to make people look. And it works in a narrow sense. People do look. But attention is not the same thing as affection, and it is certainly not the same thing as trust. You can command an enormous amount of attention and still generate very little warmth. The comments under the brand video generated attention. They generated a great deal of it. They did not generate warmth. The crowds in Reggio Emilia generated warmth. They generated warmth so visible and so complete and so obviously genuine that it was impossible to watch and not feel the difference immediately. Those people were not there out of curiosity. They were not there to watch a spectacle or participate in a viral moment. They were there because they genuinely admire the woman who stepped out of that car. That is affection built over time. That is trust that cannot be rushed or reverse engineered or bought. Stars depend on a spotlight. A spotlight can always be moved, dimmed, or pointed somewhere else entirely. An institution depends on continuity and duty, and the patient work of simply being there, year after year, reign after reign, regardless of who is watching. Italy was not the beginning of this story. It was simply the week the full shape of the ending became impossible to ignore, even for people who had been trying very hard not to look at it. Do you think this week marked a genuine turning point for how people see both Catherine and the Sussexes? Or is it just another chapter in the same ongoing story? Drop your take in the comments below, subscribe to Palace Insider so you do not miss what comes next, and a like really does help us reach more people. See you in the next one.